Today we're doing all things tri-tip, how to reverse sear it, how to reheat it for a party, and how to slice it so it comes out perfect every time. Welcome back, it's Mike C from HLM BBQ. We hope you're ready to nerd out on beefy facts today. Tri-tip is our go-to steak for a party. It's relatively inexpensive, it's got big beefy flavor, fantastic marbling, you can smoke it and get a thick crust while keeping it medium rare. You can buy your tri-tip trimmed or untrimmed. Skip to 2 minutes, 26 seconds if you could care less about knowing how to trim a tri-tip. Start by patting the tri-tips dry with a paper towel so they're not slipping around like soap in the shower. Once they're dry, find the seam where the fat cap meets the meat. Now you can do this two ways. You can trim the fat cap down to about 1/4 of an inch above the meat so there's still some fat to caramelize, or you could remove the fat cap completely. This comes down to personal preference. We remove most of the fat to get a leaner cut of meat. To do this, simply peel the fat cap back and let your knife do the work, being careful to keep your fingers intact and, more importantly, not to damage the meat. Don't worry if there's some silver skin or leftover fat. The silver skin doesn't really peel off the bark like it does on a brisket, and fat equals flavor. This tri-tip is choice grade, but don't get stuck on the grating of the meat. I've yet to have a bad tri-tip, though sometimes they're butchered poorly, but the flavor is always good. I've had Wagyu tri-tip, and comparing it to this choice grade tri-tip from RAZZLE, I really don't taste the difference. They're both incredible. With that said, it's pretty hard to screw up a tri-tip if you take your time. Thanks for showing up today. If you like nerding out on smoking meats, flavor exploding sauces, and having good old-fashioned fun, then please subscribe to our channel and tell us what you think by dropping a comment below. Trim off any bit you don't want to eat, and you can square this up if you want a nicer presentation, which we do. We spend about 7 minutes trimming each tri-tip. Now today we had a little extra time, so we're dry marinating the meat. This also works as a dry brine, as you don't need to wash any of the seasoning off, but you still get the benefit of locking in the moisture, which means you're locking in flavor. You could also mix yourself a marinade for a Santa Maria style flavor. You could crust this in herbs and garlic and serve it at Christmas as opposed to a prime rib, though it's hard to beat a prime rib at Christmas. Now it's time for our binder. Our go-to binder is good old-fashioned yellow mustard. We found it creates the thickest bark. It imparts no mustard flavor, so don't be scared. It seals in beefy flavor, and it works as a meat tenderizer. We are seasoning these tri-tips two ways. The first with the classic salt and pepper, more pepper than salt. We're using one of these tri-tips for a hangout tonight and the other for a party tomorrow, so stick around to the end of the video and we'll show you how to reheat and cut up a tri-tip perfectly. The tri-tip is located at the bottom tip of the sirloin, close to where the bavette is located. It's roughly a triangle shape, hence the name triangle tip, or tri-tip for short. The next tri-tip, we're going to mix it up and use barbecue seasoning. We're using 2 layers of our own seasoning. The first is HLM BBQ RAZZLE. It contains some wild ingredients that make the beef flavor pop. And the next seasoning is HLM BBQ back rub, which is our classic barbecue seasoning. It not only adds flavor, but it adds a natural bright red color, making the beef both appetizing to the eyes and the palate. You may procure seasonings from our website in the description below. Once these are seasoned heavily, grab some metal trays and lay the tri-tips in. You could start smoking these meats right away now, directly on the smoker, or you could let the seasonings marinate and brine and tenderize the triangle tips. I'll stop saying that. By leaving these in the fridge for a few hours, or you could go overnight. It's been 5 hours. Let these come up to room temp for about 30 minutes while we prep our smoker to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you've got enough fuel in there to get this done. And what we're doing right now is a reverse sear, meaning we smoke these at a lower heat and slowly bring the internal temp up to the desired doneness. For us, that's 125 degrees Fahrenheit internal, which after searing and resting should be a nice medium rare, maybe a little closer to the medium side, which is actually better for a tri-tip as the fat renders a bit more, making it more tender than a rarer steak. Now we're about an hour in and they look great just after smoking them, but we're really looking for the super crust. I transfer mine to my propane grill because it can withstand a lot higher heat and I don't want to melt anything on my smoker, being that we aren't searing these in the traditional way. Now you could warm up your grill and get it searing hot, but we picked up this weed burner from Harbor Freight and are having way too much fun with it. Check it out. We're searing both sides of these carefully as we don't want to burn the barbecue seasoning, but just take a look at these tri-tips. They smell smoky, like they just roasted over an open fire. The salt and pepper looks like a classic Texas style steak, and the HLM barbecue seasoning has a huge crust and beautiful color. Now, When I mention cutting these a specific method, you see how there's grains running from left to right here and then from the top down? You want to cut this roughly in the middle of where the triangle would be, which will make this a lot easier to identify which direction we're cutting these slices into. You want to cut against the grain, which will make each steak slice more tender. Just take a look at that color on the tri-tip. It's perfect medium rare from edge to edge. Reverse searing eliminates a lot of those gray areas of meat because tri-tip is so thick, a lot of people overcook it around the edges, which is taking away from the natural beefy flavor. Trust us, take your time. Even if you're using a propane grill, drop that down to 300 degrees Fahrenheit and just let it cook slow. You don't have to have a smoker to make tri-tip turn out perfect every time. Though that extra smoky flavor and smell adds a pretty big difference at the end of the day if you're going for maximum flavor. You could eat them right now and be completely satisfied. We wanted a special topping, so we whipped up a Thai Chili Chimichurri. If you've never had chimichurri, it's one of the best sauces on the planet. Check the link above as we have an easy recipe that goes great with this steak. I've been eyeballing these steaks for a few hours now and they look beautiful, but let me tell you, the flavor is so beefy. The crust has a crunch and the chimichurri explodes with flavor, which makes this one of my favorite steak bites of all time. Now, we kept the cooked salt and pepper tri-tip for the next day's party. Just pop it in the fridge and about an hour and a half before the party, bring it out, leaving it covered, throw it on the smoker for about 30 to 45 minutes at 275 degrees Fahrenheit, then check the temp. It should be around 120 degrees to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. And as you can see, the steak turned out almost exactly the same as it looked yesterday, except now we have all this beefy, juicy goodness at the bottom that we can use to keep the steak at maximum flavor. And now look for the grain on the steak. The long skinny part is normally cut into medallions, but sometimes it's hard to identify which direction the grain is going. Just kind of separate it with your knife. Now, as you can see, the tri-tip is still a perfect medium rare. That crust is stuck to the beef like the oil-based paint from my trailer is stuck on my hands. It's never coming off. Now we're on the larger part of the triangle. This is cut into longer, more rectangular steak slices, and I'm cutting mine a little thicker than a pencil. If you're going to serve this as a tri-tip sandwich, you'd cut it about twice as thick as your knife blade. And once they're cut, place them back in the tin and cover in the extra juice from the cutting board, and now you're ready to serve. We hope this video helped today, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe to our channel. We're working hard to get you new recipes every week. If you have any suggestions or things you want to see us cook, then please drop them in the comments below. Thanks again for showing up today. Now get out and barbecue.